West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est long, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
At this benchmark, how is the other side doing? Because today also marks 100 days since the Republican Party has been completely out of power in Washington. How are they coping? How are they building back? Well, here's the lead in the front page A1 story in the Washington Post tonight. Quote, more than 5 months after the 2020 presidential election and after numerous failed attempts to overturn the results, former President Donald Trump has seized on a new avenue to try to call the election outcome into question. A hand recount of more than 2 million ballots cast in Arizona's largest county. Several advisors said the former president has become fixated on the unorthodox process underway in Phoenix, where the Republican-led state Senate took ballots and voting equipment from Maricopa County and turned them over to a private contractor called Cyber Ninjas, a contractor whose chief executive has echoed Trump's baseless claims that the election was fraudulent. Ensconced at his private club in Florida, the former president asks staffers and aides for updates about the process multiple times a day, advisors said. He has expressed particular interest in the use of UV lights to scrutinize the ballots, a method that has bewildered election experts. Quote, he talks about it constantly, said one person who recently visited Mar-a-Lago and listened to Trump discuss the recount for about 45 minutes. 100 days. This is how that part of our politics is coping. The former president, twice impeached, ousted after one term, now under scrutiny in multiple criminal investigations, whose first personal lawyer already went to prison for a felony that the Justice Department said the president was implicated in, and whose second personal lawyer had his home and office raided by the Justice Department yesterday. That former president, who is still the unchallenged leader of the Republican Party, why would you need a fresh one? He is reportedly, according to people meeting with him, obsessing about UV lights being shined on ballots in Arizona, which I guess if they're shined just the right way will somehow reveal that actually he's still president. Tonight, the news here is that Arizona's Secretary of State, Katie Hobbs, she was our guest here earlier this week, expressing grave concern about what is being done to the ballots and the election results in Arizona. The big news tonight is that her office has just been granted permission by the court to send in real elections observers, actual elections experts, to figure out what they are doing in that arena in Phoenix, to go and watch what they are doing. This is the first time that any actual expert observers have been allowed in. Now, as I mentioned, there has been a request to the Civil Rights Division, the Voting Rights Unit at the Justice Department, that the Federal Justice Department should also send in experts. There's no word on whether that will happen. But with real experts finally being allowed in who can tell the public about what's going on, with them unable to explain all these QAnon fantasy tactics and inventions that they're using to apply to the ballots, it looks like this thing might finally be getting corralled. But this is the animating concern in Trump politics right now. This is the animating concern for the former president and for the Trump wing of Republican politics right now. They want to do this in Arizona. Former advisor to President Trump said last week that they plan to do this in Georgia. The Cyber Ninjas QAnon group that has been running this audit in Arizona has already said that they are going to be involved in another process to challenge what happened in Michigan. Everywhere that Republicans are in control of the state legislature or of statewide elective office, they are going to try to do what they are doing in Arizona. To have, in some cases, like really cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, conspiracy theorists, the whole stop the steal QAnon people come in and say, actually, we've been given control of the election results now, and we'll tell you how it is that Donald Trump actually won all these other states. They are doing this right now in Arizona. And the fight is on to try to stop them from doing whatever it is irreparably to the real ballots from the election. But this is the most important thing in the Trump wing of the Republican Party. While Joe Biden hits his 100-day stride, while we top well over 200 vaccine shots delivered in 100 days, with the COVID relief bill passed, with the infrastructure bill on its way, with voting rights reform, with policing reform, with the American Families Plan on its way, we are supposed to be a country that has two major parties competing with competing governing visions for the nation. With what the Biden administration and the Democrats are doing here at 100 days, do not sleep on what is happening on the Republican side right now. Because one of these two parties is not like the other. As absurd as it is the center of what they are trying to do in American politics right now. Mark my words.
It is Friday, the 30th of April of 2021. And you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life, indeed. Well, it's always disconcerting when you think, I had a fairly restful sleep, and I have been since, Joe Biden took over as president. I don't know why something as, simple as that can cause such a change in one's sleep patterns from the previous 4 years, but it really has. But it's a bit disconcerting to wake up and find that the Trumpian mindset still exists, and they're not going away. And they're going to make sure you know it. I don't know if it's because of Russian active measures. I don't know if it's because of whatever the Chinese call their counter-intel programs, disinformation programs, whatever they call that. Maybe they would call it a Golden Dragon. Maybe. They could. Or American Cafe. Hong Kong American Cafe. That's one way to spread the disinformation. You want some chop suey? Anyway, it seems that some hostile foreign powers have activated the usual suspects once again. And the level of vitriol and absolute irrational pandemic-denying anti-vax, all that we've gone through from the past year, it's like they're just throwing it all out there again. The same stuff. Masks don't work and we have proof. What? And then in the same breath, no pun intended, they say, if this is such a terrible disease, why is flu numbers down? And then you point out, because of wearing a mask, washing of hands, and social distancing, like science. And then they say masks don't work. What? If they don't work, do you really want a doctor in a whole operating theater without masks while they're cutting into you, pal? Jesus. These people are they think that they can gaslight. That's why I bring up this idea. And I guess it's a conspiracy theory because they're bringing in the New World Order and Soros funded this and what's next? The Illuminati? Invariably is going to come to the Illuminati. And I'm supposed to take that seriously. And Facebook does nothing. Yeah, it was on Facebook. I woke up to it, and I don't know why. Families on there. Well, and, you know, when you belong to these little town groups, wherever you are, you're in a little town probably, and there's this little town Facebook group, and I don't know why, but they seem to be inundated continuously with this really weird right-wing disinformation. And Facebook does nothing, and if they do something, they kick you out for standing up to it, for being a bully to the lying terrorists. Because that's what they're doing. It's terror. People afraid to get the vaccine because the vaccine, I don't know. I'm hearing, nurses are taking it and they're dying. Really? Jeez. And it's all anecdotal. Okay? That's much more reputable than JAMA. Yeah, you can't have a reputable science journal that does actual peer review because that's a conspiracy. Everything's turned around. It's gaslighting. You bring up what, you don't really want to bring up anecdotal evidence, but you kind of counter it with like, okay, you're throwing this stuff out there, but you don't actually know some principles involved in this endeavor. And I've known them and known of them since the AIDS pandemic, and that's really what it was. And all the denial and all the BS and all the politicization of it is so familiar. And now we have these people pushing this stuff now in a most virulent way because it kills people. 600,000 dead. And they question that number too. Oh, anything could be called COVID. Well, if anything, the number is undercounted. We're not hearing of overcounts in nursing homes. We're hearing of undercounts. We're not hearing of overcounts in Republican County hospitals. We're hearing of undercounts. That person didn't die of COVID. They died of a respiratory disease. Oh, really? Okay. So, why is that? Is it because Joe Biden is so popular, bumping 60% popularity? Trump was lucky to get above 38. Oh, I know. Sometimes they said he was in the 40s. And now, what I love how our media is, if it wants to get into conspiracies, why is it that the media is always trying to find something? I guess there was some poll that said 85% on this poll really liked what Joe Biden was presenting, and it turned out that the majority of the respondents were Democrats. Oh, really? How surprising is that? Because do you really think the anti-American Nazis were going to be watching Joe Biden's address to the joint House and Senate? Do you really? I mean, these are the people that stormed the Capitol and thought they were storming the White House. That's how much they know of government. Honey, I'm in the White House. No, I think you're in the Capitol. No, it's got a big dome. It's the White House. Jeez. Okay. The know-nothings have all the guns and the ammo, apparently, because it's hard to get ammo. I was in the Rogue River Guns and Drugs Pharmacy and General Mercantile store, and there were people in there trying to get ammo, but ammo's getting hard to get and expensive, and they're blaming it on Joe Biden because he's a socialist. Really? Maybe it's the magic of the market. Everybody like you is buying up all the bullets, and now they can't get any, and what you can get are at a premium. Jeez. I can't get bullets to protect myself from the lizard people socialists. And we're supposed to take it seriously? We better. I just wish there was a red flag law against, those types of abusers. You have to wonder why when we talk about gun safety and we say that, people that shouldn't have guns should not have guns. And when you define who it is that should not have guns, wife beaters who have, shot their wives, maybe they shouldn't be allowed to have a gun. Or boyfriends who have beat up their girlfriends and then shot their girlfriends. Maybe they shouldn't be allowed to have a gun. And, that kind. Or, there's other personality types, obviously, and abusers of the law, gross abusers. Maybe they shouldn't be allowed to have a gun. And I don't know. What is their argument? You're going to take my guns away. You just think of the most extreme situation that you think a person should not have a gun. Even ISIS terrorists here in the United States. ISIS terrorists in the United States say that, and they'll say, what? You're going to come after me? What? Well, I just don't get the intellectual leap from keeping guns and weapons of war out of the hands of, people who really should not have them. And then a person thinking, you're talking about me? Why? Do you beat your wife or girlfriend? Jeez. Gotta think about the Second Amendment rights of all those, wife beater and girlfriend beaters out there. Which makes me wonder, are we still awash in that? I guess apparently so. Women, significant others are beating the crap out of them still. Some people would say at a higher rate, and some people would say, well, actually, I think we're just hearing about it more. It's always been pretty bad. So, here we are in a terrible disinformation campaign because Joe is doing so well. even actually, CBS and Snopes had put the lie to this poll that, they watched, people who watched, 85% of the people who watched Joe Biden's speech really liked it. So CBS and Snopes found out that the majority of the respondents were Democratic voters. Okay, we got through that. Well, that's not surprising. I don't know what they were thinking. Who would be watching Joe's speech? Really? So, and now we get to another part of this whole story. And that entails letting you know what's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy as we start off on this fabulous Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Well, at the top, this is actually heartening in one aspect to hear, and another aspect, we'll talk about gaslighting and disinformation. Well, fortunately, the courts are sending in actual elections experts to Arizona as Trump and the GOP fixate on that cockamamie scheme to overturn the previous election. And we're talking about the election that we elected Joe. I still cannot get over after Trump, quote, won. And I was sitting down with my maggot brother trying to explain, well, yeah, he won the electoral college votes, but he didn't win the popular vote. And before I could even say as soon as I said my brother screamed at me, are you saying he didn't win? They always do that. That's how they gaslight you. You can't even finish your sentence, right? And then you have to say, no. And as soon as you do that, you've lost. Because then what happened is that you just live with it. So we did. We knew how Trump got installed into the White House with the help of a hostile foreign power. Everybody knew it. We knew about it as it was happening. We saw it as it was happening. Nothing made sense. The only thing that made sense is if there was some sort of tweaking, and that's how it happened. Because there was already the voter suppression. There was already the voter purges. There was already the gerrymandering. And all the other disinformation campaigns. Okay? 3 states. 3 states, 2 counties. How'd that work again? 70,000 votes. That's all it took. We had to live with it. And now that Joe won, they can't live with it. We went ahead and said, yeah, even though he was put in there by the Russians, he is the president, so we're going to just have to live with it. And how we address that problem is if he breaks the law, he can be impeached, and he was twice. But the other big thing that we can do is vote the effer out. And we did. But can you tell them to just live with it? No. They want to destroy democracy instead. And we will not let them. On the rest of the menu, the Trump-appointed Border Patrol chief is mad that he can't use slurs to describe immigrants anymore. Well, he doesn't have to be the Border Patrol chief. Labor Secretary Marty Walsh supports classifying gig workers as employees. And the Senate Finance Committee wants to examine the Caterpillar tax probe under former AG Bill Barr's office. Yeah, why did that go away? Especially since Barr's previous job, just before taking over the Attorney General, was working for Caterpillar. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where thousands of Czechs rallied against their pro-Russian president while accusing him of treason. And an Australian mining magnate lost his copyright battle with Twisted Sister. They're not going to take it anymore. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page there is the chat room link right by the social media scroll. So go ahead and chat. Kelly is around to monitor the chat room because that's what you do. Thank you, Kelly. If you would then look across the page near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, hopefully you'll notice that we have a Patreon link. And if you would link on that and possibly consider helping us pay our bills. Indeed, when we pay our bills, we found that you can fly under the radar and continue doing what you've been doing. And what have we been doing? For the last 10 years, yes, that's right, this is our 10th year anniversary of continuous 24/7, 365 resistance broadcasting. Yeah, we're the little powerhouse that could, and we have been with your help. If you could send the equivalent of what you might spend on a espresso-type coffee drink, if you could afford to send those funds to us once a month, we then are able to pay our bills, because even though the bulk of what we do comes out of our own wallets, we would still be unable to do it without you. And we thank you very much for your great generosity, and also a big shout-out to those who recently increased their generous monthly patronage. Thank you very much. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that, and thank you, Tom. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime. Get that linked up on Twitter and other social media platforms, and you know who they are. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. And please do pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever fine podcasts can be found, mixed in with all the rest of us. Okay. Is that a humble brag? I bet it is. Okay. What was the other term? Oh, yeah, passive-aggressive. Is that passive-aggressive? Humble brag is just a nice way of saying he's a passive-aggressive. Maybe, but I'm only doing it as a joke. Isn't that what all men explain it as? Okay, enough of that. I don't know why I'm still discombobulated by a fellow who says they live in British Columbia on our tiny little Rogue River Facebook page, bringing up all this BS about, I don't know, it's going to be the Illuminati and lizard people pretty soon. masks don't work, and here's all the science that proves it. I mean, total gish galop, gaslighting BS, like that's going to work. What does he think this is? May of 2020? God. Might have worked then. Do they think it's going to work again? Gee, I hope not. All right, we better get into this first offering because time's a-flying. And it is out of the American Independent by Amy Liu. Border Patrol Chief Rodney Scott, a Donald Trump appointee, denounced a new Biden administration policy demanding changes in the language used to refer to immigrants. Scott penned a memo to acting U.S. Customs and Border Protection Commissioner Troy Miller on April 16 to protest a proposed U.S. Customs and Border Patrol policy to replace illegal alien with undocumented non-citizen. No, we want to call them... You know what? I don't even want to use those terms. Because they're not funny. It's cruel. It's racist. And yes, we've been trying to get these people to realize that calling someone an illegal alien is racist because a person is not illegal. Unless you think they're property. And then what do you call a person who thinks that another human being is property? Yeah, you call them a racist. A law enforcement source leaked the memo to conservative right-wing media outlet Breitbart, which published it on April 27, just a couple of days ago, or a few to be exact. The memorandum serves as my official non-concurrence to the proposed updated terminology for U.S. Customs and Border Protection communication and materials. I will not undermine this effort, however. I cannot endorse it, Scott wrote. He said he was concerned that the changes could potentially politicize the agency. I think we're a little late for that. Writing, mandating the use of terms which are inconsistent with law has the potential to further erode public trust in our government institutions. Well, you know what? The lawful term was undocumented immigrant. And the right-wing media called them illegal aliens. And all these racist Republicans called them illegal aliens. To the point that everybody was calling them illegal aliens. Instead of the lawful term, which is undocumented immigrant. And to be an undocumented immigrant was at worst the equivalent of not paying a parking fine. Not plugging the meter. Not plugging the meter is not the equivalent of first-degree murder. But if you're a racist and you want a racist on illegal immigrants, not plugging the parking meter, not paying your parking fines, is tantamount to first-degree murder. Scott then recommended that the changes be delayed until the Comprehensive U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021 is enacted into law, but notably, that sweeping bill is highly unlikely to pass Congress amid GOP opposition and a 50-50 party split in the Senate. The policy was implemented on April 19 despite Scott's opposition. Nandita Bose of Reuters brings us this next offering here. In the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. A lot of gig workers in the United States should be classified as employees who deserve work benefits, President Biden's labor secretary said yesterday, Thursday, suggesting a shift in policy that is likely to raise costs for companies that depend on contractors such as Uber and Lyft. Well, I don't know. If you can't afford your employees, then maybe you have to do it yourself. Huh? Labor Secretary Marty Walsh, a son of Irish immigrants and a former union member, has been expected to boost the Biden administration's efforts to expand workers' protections and deliver a win for the country's organized labor movement. We are looking at it, but in a lot of cases, gig workers should be classified as employees. In some cases, they are treated respectfully, and in some cases, they are not, and I think it has to be consistent across the board, Walsh told Reuters in an interview, expressing his view on the topic for the first time. These companies are making profits and revenue, and I'm not going to begrudge anyone for that, because that is what we are about in America. But we also want to make sure that success trickles down to the worker. Well, I don't know. Trickle down? Maybe that's a poor use of terms, Marty. You know, I have a little pet peeve about when you go into these stores that say employee owned. That's just a nice way of saying that they don't get overtime, okay? Managers don't get overtime. You're a manager. Everybody's a manager. Walsh's work at the Department of Labor is expected to have a major impact on U.S. workplace laws and regulations, including vigorous enforcement of occupational safety and health rules, overtime payments, and proper administration of employee benefit plans. You know, socialism. As many as 55 million people in the United States were gig workers, or 34% of the workforce in 2017, according to the International Labor Organization, and the total was projected to rise to 43% in 2020. We'll see if that panned out, actually. We'll see. Walsh's view on the issue could usher in new rulings from the department, which sets legal guidelines for how employers treat workers. Before his appointment, the Labor Department's Wage and Hour Division proposed rescinding a rule adopted in January that would have made it easier to classify workers as independent contractors. Roston of Reuters brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Two Democratic U.S. senators are questioning whether political interference during the Trump administration hampered a Department of Justice investigation of heavy equipment manufacturer Caterpillar, Inc., according to an announcement this week by the Senate Finance Committee's chairman. Former Attorney General William Barr, Caterpillar's former lawyer, ran the department while the investigation was underway, as if we've forgotten that. Well, some people apparently didn't know. The chair, which in the interest of fairness is one of the great senators in the history of the United States, my senator, Ron Wyden, here in Oregon, and Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, who I should say, a Democratic senator from Rhode Island, is, a pretty good senator himself, in the interest of fairness. Well, they wrote to the Department of Justice and the IRS, which we know as the Internal Revenue Service, citing a November Reuters report that the probe of Caterpillar had stalled while Barr was AG. The Senate letter seeks information about Caterpillar and another unrelated case. What other case might have stalled as soon as Barr took over? Reuters had disclosed that 6 days after Trump nominated Barr as head of the Justice Department in 2018, the investigative team in the active criminal probe of Caterpillar was told to take, quote, no further action in the case, end quote, according to an email written by one of the agents. Barr had said that as AG, he would recuse himself from any Caterpillar matters, and we know what that meant. Barr had been retained by Caterpillar in 2017 as a private lawyer to help resolve the ongoing federal investigation into allegations that the company illegally routed some profits through a Swiss subsidiary. The company said it acted properly. Reached yesterday, Thursday, Barr declined to comment, while Caterpillar's press spokesman did not immediately respond to phone calls or emails requesting a comment. Well, that brings us to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, The Real Urban Cowboy. Unlike the 1980 film with this title, the meaning here is more literal. For most, thoughts of guys on horseback in film turn to John Wayne types. In actuality, though, about a quarter of Old West cowboys were black, few of whom are ever depicted in movies. And this doesn't even consider the many African Americans who dealt with horses in cities, which is where Concrete Cowboy picks up. Set in the present day, this one's a drama set in Philadelphia's Fletcher Street Stables area, one of the few remaining inner-city stables. Shot on location with several real-life neighborhood riders cast in minor roles, the movie tells the story of Cole, Caleb McLaughlin, who's sent away for a summer to live with his estranged father, Harp, played by Idris Elba, who's also a producer here. Cole, who knows little about his father and even less about horses, is at first eager to leave this strange world. He soon befriends Shmush, a teenage drug dealer who also wants out, but who has a plan which reflects his ties to the community. Indeed, at the heart of this film are the ties that the characters, including Cole eventually, have to their under-threat way of life. If there's a villain in Concrete Cowboy, it's gentrification, which, like in many places, risks pushing low-income residents out of the communities they have inhabited for generations. In a nod to real life, the producers of the movie have set up fundraising to maintain a non-profit urban riding center in the area where they filmed. The blurring of fiction and reality allows Concrete Cowboy to ultimately be seen as a redemption tale, not just in regards to the plot, but also to a way of life in danger of becoming a memory. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Jason Goldman.
And so what happened is I started cutting open, these specimens that had, they'd been preserved and sitting in the museum collection for 5 or 6 years. And I just started, took a Dremel tool, cut off the shell, opened it up, looked at the stomach contents, and I was shocked to find that in the 10 animals that I looked at, 2 of those 10 animals had plastics in their stomach.
Greg Pauly's original plan was to compare the diets of western pond turtles, native to the creeks of the UC Davis Arboretum, with those of red-eared sliders that have been introduced. But that all changed when the herpetologist from the Urban Nature Research Center at the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles County began to look inside the sliders.
And then suddenly I thought, oh man, there's a much bigger story here, which is that they're ingesting plastics, and we know almost nothing about plastic ingestion in freshwater turtles. We know it's a huge issue in marine turtles, but no one's looking at this in freshwater turtles.
Plastic ingestion has been reported over and over again in each of the world's 7 types of sea turtles. But there is another 352 types of turtles, and only 5 studies have ever concerned themselves with plastic ingestion in those species. That's despite the fact that more than half of all turtle species are considered threatened with extinction. Turtles are among the most imperiled groups of animals on Earth.
Freshwater turtles around the world are declining. And so researchers aren't going out and euthanizing turtles and putting them into museum collections on a regular basis. We do that for lots of other species, but people aren't going to be doing it for turtles because it's just not the right thing to do from a conservation perspective.
Red-eared sliders are native to the southern U.S. and northern Mexico, but because they're so popular in the pet trade, they've become invasive on every continent except for Antarctica. As conservationists remove red-eared sliders from natural ecosystems, researchers like Polly can study them as proxies for native species. By seeing how much plastic the red-eared sliders from the UC Davis Arboretum are swallowing, he can get an idea for how much plastic the native western pond turtles may be ingesting as well. The researchers found bits of plastic in 5 of 65 turtles, or 8%. They used a technique called Raman spectroscopy to confirm that it really was plastic and not, say, bits of crayfish exoskeletons.
And that's what allowed us to determine that one of the plastics was a nitrile glove.
They also identified bits of plastic shopping bags and chunks of plastic cutlery. The results were published in the journal Scientific Reports.
There's not this awareness that freshwater turtles have this potential threat of plastic ingestion. And one of the big goals that we have with our paper is just trying to get increased awareness that plastic ingestion is potentially a big issue for freshwater turtles, and that if a researcher comes across a dead turtle or a veterinarian is presented with a dead turtle, that it's an opportunity to then examine those animals to see whether plastic ingestion is much more common than we currently think.
If there's good news, it's that none of the turtles that Polly's team examined seemed to have suffered from swallowing the litter. They all appeared to be in good health.
We're not here saying this is the newest, most horrible threat to freshwater turtles. It's probably still the case that loss of habitat, introduced predators, overexploitation, those are the big threats to freshwater turtles. But it might very well be that ingestion of plastics and other litter is a big threat for some species and for some populations. We don't know. But given that turtles are really having a rough go of it right now, this is the most threatened group of vertebrates. 61% of all turtle species are threatened or have gone extinct in historic times. It's a rough time to be a turtle on this planet.
Polly and his colleagues call on biologists to devote some of their attention to this understudied topic. And regular people can do their part as well, especially with all the single-use PPE we've all been wearing throughout the pandemic, like the nitrile glove pieces Polly found inside one of the turtles.
It's really easy to do. Limit the amount of single-use plastics that you yourself are even purchasing. Try to make sure that those plastics that you do purchase end up getting reused or recycled, and certainly try to make sure that those plastics don't end up in the environment.
Sweetie, want some fruit?
You have to use the right tool for the job. A power drill is the wrong tool to slice fruit. Just like an antibiotic is the wrong tool to treat viruses, including colds and flu. Antibiotics are only needed for certain bacterial infections. When they aren't needed, antibiotics won't help you, and the side effects could still hurt you. Ask your healthcare professional when an antibiotic is the right tool and when it's not. Visit cdc.gov/antibiotic-use.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
A Texas-sized voter suppression bill is pending in Texas. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. The proposed voter suppression legislation targets metropolitan areas where many of the state's black and brown voters live. Houston, San Antonio, Dallas, and Austin, because its provisions only apply to counties with a population of 1 million or more. For example, Harris County, which includes Houston, in 2020 had a 70% voter turnout with no evidence of fraud. One reason for the high voter participation was the availability of 24-hour voting at 8 sites on one day, the Thursday before the election. That allowed people who worked late or night shifts or 2 or 3 jobs to vote. 24-hour voting worked great! So this legislation says never again. Another reason for the high voter turnout was the 127,000 Harris County voters who used drive-through voting sites because they couldn't stand in line for hours, or because of disabilities or pregnancy or health concerns or other reasons. Drive-through voting worked great, so this bill says never again. Another makes it more difficult to remove poll watchers who are intimidating would-be voters. The list of racist voter suppression provisions goes on, raising the issue, first Georgia, now Texas. And so when it comes to voting, how many states will Jim Crow take over again? The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU, because freedom can't protect itself.
Oh, great. Here comes a new stealth attack on the fragile, life-sustaining natural resources of planet Earth. This assault is by Wall Street alchemists who are out to redefine one of our most basic resources, water. Everyone knows that water is invaluable. It's literally life, requiring a constant intake by each of us, or we quickly die. But the wizards of Wall Street want to reduce potable H2O from its environmental, humanitarian, and spiritual essence to just another perishable economic good that they can market price and sell to the highest bidder, literally turning our water into speculators' gold. This contrivance has opened the door for financial manipulators who've quietly been devising razzle-dazzle schemes to allow rich global investors to play in water. They're now pushing water futures, automated split-second trading, water-grabbing ventures, hedging schemes, and other financialization hustles to maneuver the monetary value of this essential resource. To see this ethically debased future, look to an outfit with the ominous acronym of WAM, Water Asset Management. It's buying up water rights in low-income farming communities in places like Arizona, then literally moving the commodity to rich suburban developments that will pay more. WAM profiteers call water peddling a $1 trillion market opportunity. They even boast that the devastation caused by climate change creates a market volatility that will provide an unprecedented period of transformation and investment opportunity for the water industry. This is Jim Hightower saying, let's begin to force a public discussion about this crucial question of environmental and existential ethics. Is access to an affordable supply of clean water to be a human right for all, or will we let it become a wet dream for a cabal of rich speculators?
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1952. That was the day 100,000 oil refinery workers went out on strike. The work stoppage was called by a coalition of 22 unions, including AFL and CIO affiliates and independent unions. They demanded a 25-cent hourly wage increase with shift differentials. Shutdowns began at once, and picket lines were up as soon as procedures were safely completed. The strike threatened to cut production in half. Union leaders called all but the California refinery workers out, who were central to the war effort in Korea. Oil barons had given refinery workers the runaround for 8 months during contract negotiations. The union had even postponed the original strike date in March to give federal mediation a chance in effecting a settlement. When this failed, President Harry Truman brought the case to the Wage Stabilization Board, which issued a ruling favorable to the industry. 80 companies demanded separate hearings for all 200 bargaining units involved. The union wanted one hearing for all. Even after this victory for the oil companies, they then refused to attend the hearings. When the board threw up its hands in mid-April, the new strike deadline was set. 8 days into the strike, the board ordered oil workers back to work, which they flat out refused. The oil workers union stated, quote, Strikers are fighting against a stacked deck. If corporation executives are permitted to ignore workers' needs, then to manipulate the government so the right to strike is denied, collective bargaining will be destroyed. The board then set a 15-cent an hour wage cap and shift differentials. Workers were back on the job by the end of the month, having avoided possible Taft-Hartley actions from President Truman.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 51 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high of around 80, which actually is considerably lower than what we had yesterday, which here at the mothership in Rogue River, we bumped almost 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Not as cool of a night last night. It was in the upper 40s, so I had a fan on because that's what you're going to have to get used to doing. Expecting, once again, partly cloudy skies this morning, and we'll get that high of around 80. Then becoming cloudy the afternoon. Now winds will be out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Lows in the low 50s. And we will have rain showers early this evening, becoming a steady light rain overnight. And we are expecting a drop of precipitation amounting to almost 1/4 of an inch overnight. And winds will be out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Highs tomorrow only in the low to mid-70s. Showers in the morning, then clearing with ample sunshine in the afternoon. Winds out of the northwest at 10 to 15 miles per hour, a bit brisk. And then I guess that will be a drying out period for a few more days, weeks, months. Looks like grass pollen is rated as high here in Rogue River proper. The air quality index for the region is rated as good at 30 parts per million. And that daytime UV index remains high at 7, so slather on the SP50. Do it! Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.27 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles, and relative humidity is at 85%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that crowd sources from around the world, and we know that is the Weather Underground, don't we? Yes, we do. London is 54 degrees and fair. Paris is 57 and sunny. Rome is 75 and fair. Oh, Rome in the spring. Kyiv is 63 with a light rain shower. Kabul is 71 and mostly cloudy. Hong Kong is 72 degrees and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 62 and partly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 65 and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 52 degrees and mostly cloudy. And New York is 65 degrees Fahrenheit and partly cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that crowdsources from around the world. Associated Press staff bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Thousands of Czechs rallied yesterday, Thursday, in the capital against President Miloš Zeman, accusing the pro-Russian leader of treason over the participation of Russian spies in a huge 2014 ammunition explosion in the Czech Republic, as previously reported here on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy several months ago. The protesters, who wore face masks and followed social distancing rules, spread out through the central Wenceslas Square in Prague. Other rallies were held in dozens of towns and cities across the country. They called on the Czech Parliament's upper house, the Senate, to bring treason charges against Zeman. They said his recent comments sided with Russia and cast doubt on the findings of the country's security and intelligence services about the 2014 blast, calling him a servant of Kremlin and a security risk for the country. Wow, that sounds familiar, doesn't it? The Senate already announced that such a move is being considered. Czech leaders said on April 17 they have evidence that points to the participation of 2 agents from Russia's military spy agency in the depot explosion that killed 2 people. Of course, Russia has denied that. The same 2 Russians were charged by British authorities in absentia in 2018 with trying to kill former Russian spy Sergei Skripal and his daughter with the Soviet-era nerve agent Novichok in the English city of Salisbury.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Colin Packham of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. An Australian court ordered mining magnate Clive Palmer to pay $1.2 million US, though he's paying $1.5 million Australian, in damages to Universal Music for breaching the copyright of Twisted Sister's 1984 hit song, We're Not Gonna Take It, in political advertising. The federal court heard that Palmer had refused to pay Universal to license the song, but had used it anyway with modified lyrics in advertising for his political outfit, United Australia Party, ahead of a 2019 general election. Palmer argued the tune in the advertisements was based on the Christian hymn, O Come All Ye Faithful, and that his lyrics, Australia ain't gonna cop it, no, Australia's not gonna cop it, Aussie's not gonna cop it anymore, had nothing to do with the U.S. glam rockers' hit song. Federal Court Justice Anna Katzman said Palmer's defense was fanciful. In the face of the evidence, it is, with respect, ludicrous to suggest that the UAP recording was created independently of We're Not Gonna Take It, she wrote in a ruling that was published. As well as the damages, Palmer was ordered to pay costs and to remove all copies of his song. Twisted Sister lead singer Dee Snider responded to the ruling on Twitter, "It's over, baby. We won big. We're not going to take copyright infringement anymore," he wrote after the verdict. Yeah, but they're paying Universal. Will Universal pay you? A spokesman for Palmer said the businessman would examine the ruling and consider an appeal. Palmer made a fortune from real estate and mining before entering federal politics in 2013. His party won a handful of seats before imploding in acrimony and infighting and failed to win a single seat in 2019 in spite of spending $82 million US on advertising. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know, and the week, oh my gosh, but you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we're going to meet up on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night and all weekend for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.